Hey. So this is my response to both of your videos. Sorry it took so long. I'm going to answer your questions about your situation first. So your first question was about if I was an observer in the classroom when the whole change of the pledge happened. So if I was an observer in the classroom, I would probably approach the situation in two different ways. The first situation would be to take it upon myself to maybe check up on the student personally, just throughout instruction, just, hey, how's it going? Do you understand what you're doing? Do you need help? Um, Not like something that's a big deal, but just maybe paying attention to that student more to make sure that they're redirected to their work and they're participating in those positive behaviors. If that was an inappropriate reaction to that situation, I would probably just go directly to the teacher. I would just mention to her, offhand, privately, without the kids around, that I started noticing this behavior from the certain students. I noticed that he was saying these things. Is that the correct way to say the pledge? Is that correct behavior? What should I do about it if you're not around? Just kind of come at it in almost like a casual way, just, hey, I want to let you know, because I found that in my own practicum experiences, teachers don't mind a different set of eyes keeping track of the students and being able to redirect them in classroom management. So that's probably how I would handle that if I was in your position. I think that changing a phrase like that would change a student's perspective on their education a lot. There is, I think, there's a shift in the student's education perspective if there is something at home that is causing this. But I do agree that it could be a developmental theory that could go along with this. So I thought that it kind of sounded like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because we as humans, no matter what age we are, we like to get feedback and praise from other people. We find our parents and teachers, important figureheads that we want to impress and get the okay from. So if there is a parent at home, specifically in a home environment, that says, no, you're not going to college, we can't afford it, you're not qualified enough, that is going to deter a kid from ever thinking that they could do that. It just totally destroys their self-esteem. And so in Maslow's hierarchy, there is a self-esteem level where they need that type of they need to create that status for themselves around their peers and their colleagues, gain respect from others. And so if a teacher or a parent or other peers are saying to them, oh, no, you can't do that, you can't go to college, they're going to understand that they don't have that respect, and then they're going to act in the behavior that they think is appropriate for someone who doesn't have respect. So I think that's kind of what might be going on in that situation for that kid. And then your third question said something about if you were the teacher in that classroom, what would you do? Would you consider that your job? So yes, I definitely think that would be a position for a teacher to be in to address that situation. I kind of considered about how could you be successful in a classroom if a teacher's not supporting you in any way. And so as a teacher, I would bring that student aside and just ask them, how's it going at home? How are you doing with schoolwork? Maybe say something about like, well, I've noticed that, you've been slacking off, or, changing the pledge of the school. You know, what's up with that? Can you explain to me why you're doing that? So just calmly asking them, you know, hey, what's up? And in that way, you know, they're not pressured that they're doing something wrong or that they're going to get in trouble. Just, oh, hey, I've noticed this behavior. And then your last question said, do you consider this a cognitive development? Yeah, and I think that it could be. So I went back and tried to find some evidence based on that kind of theory. And so I definitely think that maybe he, because of that age range, that he could definitely be in that concrete operational stage where they're learning to think about life abstractly. That's where they consider, you know, college and jobs and, you know, looking to high school. So I think it's a big change for them during that time. And so students are going to be hyper aware of what people think of them, what they think of themselves, what the future might look like. So I think with daily interactions like home environments, that you definitely could get that cognitive development stage to be very fragile. Definitely that's kind of the time where you hear about the make it break it students, where they could drop out and they could start getting into you know, drugs and other problems outside of school. So I definitely think that might be a problem. I don't know. It seems pretty fragile because of the shift in thinking at that point. So that was kind of my thinking on that. So I'm going to now respond to the video you made to respond to my questions. So I really wanted to thank you about your in-depth response to my video and to the questions I asked. I really, really appreciated that. It was really eye-opening for me to see what you thought, kind of how you responded, some ideas that you had. I really enjoyed you mentioning the I do, you do, we do model. I'm going to talk about that a little later. And definitely bringing up the classroom management need. So I definitely believe that the lesson did not run smoothly in the end because the teacher is lacking in classroom management. Overall, she was a really great teacher, but definitely throughout that time period, through that subject content, there was no classroom management style or consistency. So I also think that she tried to implement the I do, you do, we do model, but she really just, I don't know if she didn't understand the concept enough or if she didn't explain to the students enough, but definitely there was misconceptions about how that model worked in the classroom. I definitely think you have a great perspective about the discredibility to the teacher once they lose track of their classroom, because I was very impressed with her up until that point. And then I kind of questioned about, you know, her motivations as a teacher and her relevance to the information and why she was doing different contents. So I'm sorry I didn't describe a clear situation on the lesson. So I'm going to give you a couple information bits and try to re-explain the lesson. So it was a general education classroom in an elementary school. These were second graders. So and they were in a low socioeconomic school. So they were all really motivated to do good in school, to complete their education. They were really focused most of the time. I have seen the snack policy in other schools also, but it was not a policy in the school, which I think obviously hindered the students a lot during that time. So the lesson was that the second graders were creating these books that they would make themselves about the rainforest, because they were focusing on different ecosystems around the world. And so they had gone on a field trip and had seen videos and experienced different things about the rainforest. And they were to come back and finish up these books. They had written about the plant life, the geographical features, the animals, and so the teacher wanted them to create a map in their notebook of the world, which they could go back and color specifically based on rainforests around the world, where they weren't, where they were destroyed, etc. So I wanted to print out an outline. So here is, hopefully you can see it, this is the sheet that they used to create their map. So the map was supposed to fit into a box this size, and they were supposed to take a map that looked like this, just an outline of the world, and fit it into the box on this sheet. So they began with that lesson on the floor in the front of the classroom when they had clipboards. And the teacher had a rolling chart, and she told them that this is what they were doing, and she wanted them to follow her. To follow her while she started with the map. And she started right here with Canada and wanted to work their way down through North America to South America. And the students didn't get it at all right away. They just had puzzled looks on their face, and it just wasn't going well. And so the teacher realized this really quickly. So she sent the kids to go back to their table groups so they could individually try to work on that. And while they were transitioning to that, she placed a giant image, just like this one, on the screen so they could look at it. And then she got up to the front and said, okay, let's try this again, and took a pen and traced the front board. And that even almost made things more confusing. Kids started complaining about how they couldn't see, how it was too far away, the lighting was messed up, just totally didn't understand. And so she just started printing out maps and giving them to students and say, okay, work on your own, work individually, work in partners, basically whatever. That's when I took my group of students back to the back table and started working with them, and she took a group of students to the front and started working with enough like them too. So that's kind of where the class got really chaotic, because we had students everywhere, some with me, some with her. When kids got frustrated, they would come over to us, they would leave, so there wasn't really any structure to the lesson. The noise level was really, really loud. And that is when the kids starting to get aggressive with their papers. And now this is not a normal behavior for the kids. So, not a special education classroom, not anything. This is just obviously the highest level of frustration, because the kids did not act like this ever. Just really, they were really becoming verbal with their dislike on this assignment. And so at some point, I don't know, half an hour into this assignment, the teacher just called it off, said, okay, let's not do this anymore. You can either go back to your writing, you can read, just maybe not this. And so we transitioned back into something that was much more calm, and she kind of got the class under control. Afterwards, when the kids went to lunch, she and I got to have some conversation about that. And what I thought was interesting is her perspective on how the lesson went. She was really upset that the students didn't understand the lesson. She even said to me about how, this task isn't that difficult, they should understand. And I was really concerned about that because it was obvious that they had no background information about map making. They didn't understand size ratio. They didn't understand shrinking the image down to fit into that space, about breaking the image apart into lines and little squares. It just wasn't there in their schema or their background knowledge. So she kept asking me, like, don't you agree? Don't you agree? They should have gotten that. They should have understood. And, I tried to just provide feedback as best I could, saying, I don't know. They didn't understand, particularly like this concept, like shrinking down the image or creating boxes to, understand how to fit that in. So, I think it was just overall just misunderstanding of the students and the teacher, the students misunderstanding the teacher's instruction, and the teacher misunderstanding the student's capability in this particular assignment. So, and I think that's it. So I hope that cleared up some misunderstandings about how the lesson took place. And I hope to hear a response from you soon. Thanks.